Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Reimagine HR series. As we're waiting for people to join, we really have a chance to set the tone for this series. This series is very interactive for you to gain and hopefully take something back of value to you. I know we have actually a lot of people on the line. And in many cases, there are going to be demos in this series. Today, we're going to have a panel discussion, and I'll come on to about why. But this is interactive. So in my first interaction, I thought it'd be very useful to make sure we're properly leveraging the tools. You'll see at the bottom in the questions in the chat, sorry, that you can share. If I ask you, what is your favorite digital tool and why? So as you join, if you put your favorite digital tool and why, it doesn't actually have to be in HR. We will share this back with you at the end. My favorite tool is basically Elevate. It's a mind training tool which gives you 5 exercises a day to keep that mind sharp. I basically started using it after I gave birth, even though my first child is just turned 7, but it really keeps the mind sharp. So it was one of my favorite tools because it's very easy to use and simple to use, and is a real example of digital in the consumer life that we bring through. So if you go to the chat just by way of introduction, and then you just put down, what's your favorite tool and why, as we have people joining, and I will kick off very shortly. So what do we have? We have coming in here, we have, does anyone have a favorite tool that they have in their consumer life? A little bit like me in terms of Elevate. If you want to put that in the chat tool, and we'll share that later, or indeed you can share it all the way along. Okay. So let's start. I wanted to give everyone the big picture, and as we get people joining in, this is the first of the Reimagine HR webinars. It's a bit like a Netflix series where you can go back and watch anytime you like. You can share, you can go to for your go-tos, or indeed you can pick up on a conversation. Yeah, the focus is on real challenges and opportunities that are present for you and present that we see in the market. How do you and we really leverage digital to redefine HR and the business? And this is really to bring the dialogue that we're having with clients, but to bring that dialogue into a forum, into a space which is interactive. And indeed, any feedback that you have, as this is the first one, please let us know. Today, our focus is on the unconnected. I do see some chats coming up, so hopefully you can navigate, Kasia, the context. But today, our focus is on the unconnected employee. I really want you to walk away with 3 things. The first is I really want you to care about a man called Terence. How do we administer with Terence? How do we engage with him? And finally, how do we connect with Terence? The second is, how do we leverage the devices which are part of Terence's everyday life? Because that will be the key to the digital age. And the third is to think about something that I'm going to introduce to you, which is the iceberg effect of digital. Yeah, so I want you to walk away with those things. First, we're going to have introductions, and I'm going to set a little bit more context specifically on this session, and then we're going to move into the main session. So in purposes of equality, Warren, should we start with you and your introduction? Because it's not just me running the session today. I'm all for equality.
Well, I'm not too sure about quality, but hi, Chantal. Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Warren Gowes, and I'm calling in from lovely, sunny Florida in the US. I'm originally from South Africa, but I've been living in the US for about 18 years. And for all of that time, this is pretty much the space that I've been in. So leveraging digital within HR, specifically within the HCM space. So happy to be here.
Okay. So my name's Dr. Shanta Brandt-Larsen. I am passionate about digital, and particularly in HR. I disrupt that within the Capgemini space, leading on digital, and also outside as well. But today, I'm very much looking at it in the heart of HR. This topic is very close to my heart. My dad actually used to work for BMW building minis, and he was a foreman. And my very first job in HR, I've not always sat in consulting. I've sat in one of the big telcos in the UK, worked with a lot of engineers and call centers. So how to actually administer payroll and automate payroll and work and engage with really the crux of the business is sometimes forgotten. And so it's very a good piece for us to start with on our webinar, to deal with something that can be brushed under the carpet in terms of how do we actually digitalize the unconnected employee. So that's a little bit about me, but more to go on to the next piece to give you the big picture. So if you go on, Warren, to the next slide, please. There was only 3 slides. There are only 3 slides that I'm going to share with you. The rest will actually be going through the demonstration and the panel. I just wanted to contextualize what we're seeing in the market and why we are really bringing these issues forward. We have done a lot of work with many of the people on the call today and people outside, which is saying 3 things. One is there's a lot of replacement of human capital management systems. I think 40% of the market in HR are replacing them. So there's this rip and replace. And with that comes a lot of dialogue around how do we better rip and replace that? What systems are we doing? How do we simplify our landscape? Yeah. And part of that has to cover all employee types, including the unconnected employee, whether we call it offline or blue collar. Yeah. The second topic that we are addressing quite urgently is the optimization of that. Because if we still have lots of localization and we still have the unconnected employee and they're not fully engaged and they're not fully connected and we're not administering through to payroll as optimally as possible, then are we really getting the full business case? So it's optimization. And hand in hand with that actually is experience. Yeah, the adoption of these technologies is critical, because actually what we end up doing is we end up turning over the responsibility or that piece of HR from a few hundreds of HR managers to thousands of managers. So we change that support model. So the other thing that we work on quite uniquely and is around a help desk, a digital one point of contact to really support that adoption to drive the biggest business case. That leads me on to the next one, and this will be the second to final contextualization slide, is that in that there are 3 things that we are doing to address from the big picture. The first is the digital help desk. So we do really put the customer first. It is about for us providing that right touch, and the right touch is not just about having self-service to everyone, but what is the right point of interaction? How do we reduce duplication, and how do we optimize that upstream interaction and data going all the way through to payroll? And you'll see some of that today with Terence, who will be the one that I wanted to introduce you to. He's a fictional character that we'll take you through today. And the second piece that we're looking at is digital HR operations. Digital HR operations is not just about the human capital management system, but it is about the supplementary tools that run underneath. There are some things that those tools will do, and there's some things that they won't. So when you start to bring together that whole picture and that operating model to automate things like documentation, when we have starters, movers and leavers, when we have thousands of people turn up at the factories or the retail and we need to administer them very fast, or seasonal workers, how we do that and how we automate that through, that's the HR operations. And finally, in the overall Netflix type series, you will also see digital learning operations, which is how do we move at pace with the market in terms of reskilling, learning and engaging. You'll only see points of that touch on today in terms of engaging and connecting. You will see it because we still need to engage and connect with the unconnected employee, but there's a stronger piece coming through later on in this series about artificial intelligence and how we really personalize learning. Okay, enough of that, bringing you to today and the reason why. I did say that my last goal was to introduce you to the iceberg effect, yeah? Now, there's a lot of HR people that I could see on the line. I was looking at the list when Kasia had it up before. And the iceberg effect, so being in HR, being in change, we have implemented many systems, yeah? Classically, you know, it's been the SAP system. Now we're in a new era of human capital management. And when we implement systems or we do changes, we think about the iceberg of behaviors, culture. We think about it in change management. One of the things that is coming up, dialogue after dialogue after dialogue, that I wanted to share with you, and perhaps you can feed back to me in the panel section of later on, is that when we also delve behind it, there's this almost lift up the bonnet and what lies beneath. And these are gaps in process and in people and in technology. And they are gaps of really, how do we do this local data? We can come with a global system, local data and documentation. And what we have within Capgemini is we have a global process model. So we have a hire through to retire. I think that's a general, everyone in HR should know that. We call it different things as it goes throughout. So from recruitment through to administer to work, your HRA, your rewarding of your people, so your payroll, your compensation, your learning, so managing talent, managing learning, your data administration, and then your help desk. Today, one of the problem statements in our focus is in that administer to work. And you will see in administer to work, we talk about the offline employee. And this is one of the challenges that our manufacturing CPRD clients, our manufacturing clients, our retail clients are coming to us with, because they're saying, well, we have all of these people to hire on one day, or we have these fluctuations, or how do we actually connect with the people in the call centers or the engineering? Maybe they are allowed a mobile, maybe they're not. So that's really what this session is about. And the iceberg effect is about how do we deal with, get away from the gloss, but deal with the actual things that will optimize the basics. And that's really what we're going to do today. So that's enough contextualization. I'm going to pass you over to Warren. Because he's going to have the nuts and bolts of the session and show you a little bit more about how, and then we can have a very interactive dialogue. I think we do have a little pulse survey just as we hand over. Am I correct, Kasia? There's a little pulse survey to just feedback where you are in your digital journey.
Yes, can we please see the poll? Thank you.
Yeah, so what we really wanted to do is, as we're going through, we wanted to adjust to where everyone is. Everyone will be in different places. We really wanted to get an understanding and a feel for, where are you? Are you just starting out, as in you're trying to even look at your technology roadmap? Are you well on the way? Are you implementing a system at the moment so we can attune, this session to that and address questions at the end? Or are you a pro? And we should actually have you hosting one of these sessions, perhaps. But are you a real pro? Like, yes, I've implemented a new system, very much digitalized and aligned to the business. So if you could poll on that would be great. And I'll hand over to Warren, and you can meet Terence. So Terence is a little bit like my dad, but Terence is a great man. Okay.
Great, and thank you so much for that, Chantal. So yes, let's dig right in, and I'm really excited to introduce you to Terence. And as we meet Terence, we're going to go through just a few things about what we can do through our digital transformation as we go from just starting out all the way to a pro, on some ideas that we can look at to help drive results that we're going to look at right in the end. So let's first meet Terence. Terence is an hourly contract worker at Stark Enterprises. He's a fictional character. Stark Enterprises, even though it's one of my favorites, is a fictional company out there. He operates various machines during his shift, and he does not have a company-issued device. So he feels somewhat disconnected or isolated, really, from the corporation and HR. So how can we help with this situation? So first of all, how can we then connect with Terence? And what we need to do there is really focus on Terence's initial point of entry into the organization. And that is basically when he comes to work every day. So what Terence does in a typical day in the life is he's going to walk into the business, the factory, if it's a retail location, log in to his cashier or till, and what he'll do is clock on, go about his day, and clock off. And those are the three major touch points that he will have during his time at the organization. So as he clocks in, this initial point of contact is where we can greet Terence. This could be an audible greet. And we also want to push relevant information to him. Terence will then go about his day and interact with this digital device by messages. He will be forward messages to him that are important messages to tell him that maybe there are some shift swaps available. There is shifts that he can bid on. There's required training he needs to take. There's new standard safety operating procedures that he can do. He will also use a device, a digital device like this, to record what he does in the business. His shop floor data transactions, project managing, equipment tracking, because this is important information that the business then uses to optimize their internal processes. At the end of the day, Terence will then clock off. He will get to the device, and at this time, he will go on his merry way off home. But we can also use this opportunity to push information and push messages to him. Like in this case, open enrollment ends tomorrow for any kind of benefits or other important information that we want to make sure that Terence gets. Because other than this device right now, we are relying completely on the bulletin board that Terence walks by or on Terence's direct supervisor or manager. So this device, being our primary source of communication with Terence, is very, very important for us to at least make that initial connection with Terence. Next, what we're going to look at is, once we've made that initial connection, we want to take this a step deeper. We want to be able to really engage with Terence. And when we engage with Terence, there are a few things that we need to consider to make sure that we are forming that deeper level of connection with him. Almost an emotional connection, so that we can entice Terence to take full advantage of our HR assets. Before I move on, we do want to take just one quick poll to see how we're doing so far. Could we get that poll up and running quickly? I know we just finished a poll to see where we are in our digital transformation, but there's just one quick health check poll that we want to do at this point to see where we are. And the polls are coming in, and we're just going to give that a few more seconds, and then we'll have a look at the results, and we'll just dive a little bit deeper. Now that we've got that initial connection and we've established that initial connection, and what we've done here is, this is just the most basic. As we start on our digital transformation and start moving to that pro series, this is just where it starts. It's that first connection to that unconnected worker. But how can we take that and improve on that and mature in that to really get to a good level of engagement? So that's what we're going to look at next, and see how that can eventually drive results. And we'll end on that. So now that we've got the polls in, can we see those results, please? Okay, love it. Okay, so let's keep moving. And when it comes to engagement, we've seen the initial point of entry. How can we engage an employee more right there? And we could be a little bit limited. And that's just really depending on the dynamics of people, flooding into to the workplace, leaving, trying to get to their job. So we want to maximize that short little bit of time that we have with the point of entry. But then also maybe we can have other portals within the shop floor or within the business, where we can entice those unconnected employees to just come to us a little bit more, so that we can engage them just a little bit more. And we're going to see how we do that. So when we look at our initial point of entry, one thing that we want to be able to do is provide high value self-service. And how we do that is just some examples of bringing in other HR and payroll assets to the end user. Ideas such as their accrual balance. How much personal holiday time do they have right now? This way they don't have to go and wonder where this might be, or bother HR. It's right there at their fingertips. having the availability to have a look at their schedule and maybe even have a bit of a hand in that schedule that's coming up. Have a look at any messages that we want to push to them. What are their hours that they work for so far this week? Being able to put in an absence request for some time off, or maybe swap a shift with somebody else. These are all high value self-service items that we can use just to better engage and draw the employee in, because it's something that's in it for them. Next, there are these portals that we can set up. This could be through a conventional kiosk in a common area, like you see on the top area, as Terence is moving between shifts on a turnaround, or maybe during his break time. He can access these kiosks, or maybe it could be a cash register or a till or a digital tablet, but it's just a portal that Terence can go to just take in that extra layer deeper. When we're looking at engaging Terence, there are a few things that we can look at to really draw him in. And the first idea is that we really need to know Terence. Terence wants to know that you, Stark Enterprises, know me. So we need to have a hyper-personalized user experience with some intelligence, some AI built into that. Then we need to be able to give Terence ideas that we've looked at already, but maybe a little bit more immersive, like self-service. What's in it for me? Terence wants to know, how can you help me have a better work-life balance? How can you help me be more productive? Another idea is, how can you grow me, Stark Enterprises? What can you do to help me develop myself to be better tomorrow than I am today? And finally, how can you reward me? Let's have a look at some of those ideas that we can start looking at in our digital transformation that we can incorporate to build a stronger engagement with Terence. So at this time, we're just going to pop into a short little demonstration on what we can do with Terence. And I'll just transition to that now. And before you see a portal that is enabled in a break room or one of these tablets where Terence will go to be able to do some of these self-service features, but also a portal that we can use to show Terence that we do care about him, we do know him, we can help him, we can grow him, and we can reward him. So as Terence accesses a portal like this, the first thing that we do is we show Terence that there's something waiting for him on his timeline. And as Terence enters his timeline, we want to give him that user experience that he's become familiar with through some of the more consumerized applications and digital tools out there that we use, whether it be sort of a Facebook-like timeline that you see here or whatever it might be, but something that Terence has become used to, but also something that he is going to expect. We find that what users use at home and what they're most comfortable with, similar to the poll that we did right in the beginning of this webinar, is what users come to expect from their workplace. So in this situation, we want to give Terence a timeline of all the activities in order that he needs to do. And this could be just everything right now, or it could be segmented to specific areas such as his learning goals or some sort of talent management or workforce management. But here what we're seeing is just some important courses like safety training, for proper forklift operation, and so on, even right down to new standard operating procedures. There is a year-end performance review that's coming up, and Terence can, with one touchscreen click, access any of these areas. But the one area I want to touch on today is specifically around messages. These other areas are things that we can always get into at a later time, but messages are important because this is how we're going to be able to communicate with Terence on that next deeper level. And we can see within his messages that there are some high value items that he needs to know about. There are some shifts out there that he can bid on. That is important to Terence because Terence wants the opportunity to earn a little bit more money because he's got some private goal coming up, whether it is a a new present for his daughter or whatever it might be, there is something that Terence can do that we as Stark Enterprises can offer Terence, such as a shift bid. We're sending out a notification to wish him happy birthday. It was his birthday the other day. We knew that, and we automatically sent him that notification. There's new training that Terence needs to go and take. So it's important to have this ability to communicate with Terence, either through a device like this or through that initial device that we had. Remember that time clock? These are the same messages. These are persistent and pervasive messages that we want to make sure Terence is getting, because Terence probably very, very rarely, if ever, logs into his corporate email account. Terence rarely accesses his learning management system. So the only way that we can make sure that we get the relevant information to Terence, especially from a compliance perspective, is to make sure that at the time of his initial point of entry, when he clocks in, he is notified immediately that he has a new standard operating procedure or new training or certification that he needs to take. When we lure him or incite him to come into a portal like this, we want to make sure that we have that same pervasive communication that goes right down to Terence. We've also mentioned before that it's all about knowing Terence. So those activities that you saw as I logged in there, those are all very specifically designed for Terence based on his job, based on his goals, and based on his preferences. So that is some artificial intelligence that you want to make sure you incorporate so that the activities and the messages that you send Terence are relevant to Terence, not everybody or everybody else. That way Terence knows and feels that Stark Enterprises knows him, and he feels that connection with Stark Enterprises. Next, how can we help Terence? And as we look at other areas such as going into standard operating procedures, we can help Terence by giving him learning activities and recommended learning. Again, here we see recommended activities based on what Terence is doing in the organization right now today. We can push this out to him to help Terence grow and maybe help him to become more certified so that there's more opportunities out there for him. As we're looking at providing Terence with more benefit, we can enable some self-service features like Terence viewing his schedule, being able to go into a consolidated schedule of absence and leave management and his schedule from workforce management all in one place. This way he doesn't have to go and pick around and go into different disparate systems to find the information that he wants to do. So right here, this is his schedule for the week. There's a vacation day or a personal holiday that Terence has tomorrow. He's got a company holiday coming up on Friday, but what Terence wants to do is for Thursday, he would really like to go and offer his shift up for a trade so that he can attend his daughter's soccer game. And that is important to Terence. So he can, through self-service, offer his shift up for a trade and maybe trade with somebody else. And it's self-service features like this that will entice Terence to keep coming back. And when Terence comes back, what we want to do is to make sure that we push those other notifications like training, safety. That's how we're going to capture his attention and make sure that we can have all of our other digital assets right there front and center for him. Also, by incorporating some payroll and HR together in one place, we want to give Terence a high-value absence calendar. So it's very easy for Terence to be able to go and make absence requests. He can also look on this calendar when other people within his line of business is going to be absent. Terence is on a production line, and he's got a very specific role on that production line. He knows what their production goals are. So what Terence wants to be able to do is to go and take time off, but make sure that it might not impact anyone else. So he could see when other people on his line are off as well. In this case, Terence wants to go to Thursday. Maybe he wasn't able to swap his shift with anyone else. So Terence would like to go to Thursday and request some time off. He's not quite sure how to use the system. He doesn't do it a lot. So he's going to go into a wizard. And in this case, a simple wizard will ask him some basic questions. What is the nature of this absence? And Terence sees something here. This could be a family issue. I don't know. I mean, it's not really a medical issue. It's a family issue. Let me go see what this is about. And at this point, Terence can go and click on that and open up some content that could be enabled for Terence based on wherever he needs to go. In this case, maybe it's the a birth of a child or whatever the situation is, and he can link to other resources, whether it's outside the organization or within your HR assets. Maybe it's a document, maybe it's a learning management asset, a book, whatever that may be. He can access those while he's doing some self-service features just to bring that HR a little bit closer to him and give him a higher value experience. Then there are some shifts that Terence can bid on, like we mentioned before. And Terence can go into the system, have a look at which shifts he's available to bid on. And if there is a shift that Terence is not certified for, it will give him a chevron and basically color this a different color and say, hey, Terence, you have not completed the standing operating procedure that you were given 2 weeks ago, so you cannot work on the shift this weekend. That could be a major incentive for Terence to go and take that learning activity so that next time he's not caught in the situation and he can have a better experience and a better work-life balance. As I mentioned before, one of the ideas that we want to start thinking about is how can we incorporate more of a complete holistic HR experience for Terence. One of the engagement principles that we mentioned was reward me. So we spoke about know me. We need to know Terence. We need to have a complete aggregation of HR data from learning management, talent management, HR systems, workforce management, payroll, all of those areas so that we can get a complete profile of Terence so that we can know Terence. That way we send him the right information. We recommend the right learning activities. We recommend the right development plan, all of these for Terence. So that's the first thing. The second thing we looked at was how can we help Terence? Terence wants to know what's in it for him, and we've given him high value self-service features. Terence also wants to be able to grow professionally or grow personally. That way we have to push learning activities to Terence to help him grow and maybe be better at his job tomorrow, a little bit better than maybe he was today. And the fourth thing we mentioned was rewarding Terence. And one way to do that, other than simple compensation, which might be a major driver for Terence, is this idea of gamification, where we can engage Terence a little bit more by awarding him maybe different badges or levels or points as he interacts with the system. So as Terence goes into the system and he uses self-service or he takes a training activity, we can reward him with points and give, or maybe badges. And that way, Terence can have a visual input and a feel for how he's doing in the organization, and maybe even have a leaderboard where Terence can see, since he's taken this new standard operating procedure or he's done this new elective learning that he elected himself, it wasn't pushed him, but he actually went there during break and took a standard forklift training, maybe he gets more points than he would for any other activity. And that can push him up the leaderboard. And this is just another way on how we can optimize with Terence, how we can engage him more and optimize his experience just that little more. Okay, so now that we've had a look at Terence, I think at this point in time, what we'd like to do is let's just take a quick check and see how we're doing, where we are. Can we just run another quick poll to make sure how everyone's doing? And then we're going to take it just one more step deeper and have a look at, right, once we've made that initial connection, once we've just seen how we can engage and really entice Terence to to maximize and take a benefit from our HR assets, what's the next step? How can we then drive that towards optimization and results? So before we do that, let's take a poll, and I'll give you guys a few seconds to do that. Right, it's still coming in and coming in. All right, thank you very much everyone for participating. These polls are extremely helpful. It kind of lets us know if we're on track and how we can adjust and adapt. So thank you so much. Can we see the results of that poll?
I think we're seeing it on the screen now, Warren.
Are you seeing it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
I think we could, if in terms of expectations, I think there's maybe one we can make sure we hopefully pick up yours in the panel discussion. But I think we're running on track.
Awesome. All right, let's go and have a look. Let's keep going and have a look at how we can then. We've made the connection. We've gotten Terence a little bit more involved than he was yesterday by bringing some of those high value HR assets right down to Terence. So how can we now optimize what we have and bring complete visibility to the line manager? So to do that, we're going to have a look at just a quick case study here and a quick example of what Stark Enterprise did on this next step of their digital maturity model. Stark was really interested to ensure compliance and safety. This was not just about putting safety messages on the bulletin board. This was not just about having managers let the line workers know that there's training. This was about ensuring compliance and training. So what Stark did is they said, hey, let's integrate our learning management system with our learning management system, with our workforce management system, specifically around scheduling, for instance. So what happened here is the idea that Terence came into work and he clocked on through that initial device that we saw before, his time clock, that initial point of entry. Either he clocked on for the day or he went to a specific machine and he recorded or he clocked onto that specific machine. And at that time, the device said, sorry, you cannot do that because you're not certified to work from this equipment. You see, what happened is the device in real time had a look at the LMS and had a look at which activities are required by that date and time to be able to work on that new piece of machinery. Because 2 weeks ago, there was a recertification requirement that Terence had to at least read a new standard operating procedure for that machine based on software updates or that went out. And Terence didn't do it, or he didn't complete it in time. So this is what happened over here. So now Terence cannot work. So Terence calls his supervisor, and Terence goes to one of those portals that we spoke about. It could be a tablet, a kiosk, but he went to a portal. He went to his timeline. He took the training. In this case, it was safety awareness. As he completed the training, he achieved his rookie status for gamification. And immediately at that point, in real time, Terence can now go and clock in and work on that specific equipment. And what Stark Enterprises is able to do here is enforce compliance using digital assets. And that can prevent all kinds of issues that could have happened later on. And this is a major win for them in their digital transformation. So as we look at that, we do want to see, well, how does this impact Terence's supervisor? And this is where I want to introduce you to Ida. Ida is the line supervisor where Terence works. And Ida manages the morning shift. She's got 5 direct reports. She does have a tablet. So we've looked at the unconnected worker, but how does Ida manage, and what visibility does she have to her unconnected workers? She is connected, but because this specific plant is so big, that Ida needs a digital device because she cannot be everywhere all the time. But it is important for her to be able to get real-time analytics and real-time updates. Again, safety and compliance is really important to Stark Enterprises. So let's have a quick look at Ida's experience and what Ida typically does with her digital systems. So I'm going to go out and let me go and have a look at Ida's dashboard. So Ida's dashboard that she walks around with looks something like this. Now she can configure her dashboard, of course, but what we're doing here is we are pushing relevant information to Ida in real time. Now, what's happening in the background is as Terence is clocking on, clocking off, doing self-service around his schedule, around his absence and leave management, all of this is being automated and being fed to payroll. So all of this zero to gross real-time information is completely visible to everyone. It is calculated in real time, and at the end of the payroll cycle, when payroll checks off that payroll is ready to go and all the records have been approved, this will all go off to whatever the local payroll is, and the checks will be cut, and you'll have the gross to net, which is the taxes and the benefits will be applied. But the zero to gross is all being done right here in real time. That is very, very important for Ida, because one of Ida's goals in the company at Stark Enterprises is to control cost while she improves production. So here she can see that she can track how her team is approaching overtime. What's the schedule versus actual? And she can drill into any one of these areas, either by day or by week. There are exceptions being sent to her, which is important for her from a compliance perspective, because there are some rules about how long certain people can work on a machine before they have to take a break. So there's some fatigue rules built in there, and these will get pushed to Ida in real time because she wants to avoid those issues rather than deal with them later. So Ida can go in at any point and have a look at these exceptions by day. For instance, if I drill into that right now, I've already got 4 exceptions, and Ida wants to drill into these and have a look at them. And these exceptions are, in this case, this is somebody worked on a higher rate. So that's important to Ida. Remember, she wants to control cost. So the fact that somebody's working in a job where they're getting paid more than what she planned for, she needs to know about that right away. So she can go there and do something about it and not wait till the end of payroll, for instance. So there's just information and analytics that is crucial for the goals of Stark Enterprises, but it can only be met when this information is pushed in real time with complete visibility right there where Ida is doing her work. I mentioned before that it's very difficult for Ida to be everywhere all the time. So with something like a current attendance that shows Ida exactly where everyone is, where her team is, and where they've been before and what they're doing is very important to her as well. We mentioned before that the connection back into HR, learning management, talent management, workforce management, all being unified in a single system is very, very important, because when Ida does go into a weekly schedule, for instance, and looks for any gaps in the schedule. So here you'll see, as I'm looking at my weekly schedule, specifically for line 1, there's a gap there. And I'm sure that the gap is because Terence is on a vacation or on a personal holiday tomorrow morning. So that's probably causing a bit of a gap later in the week, and there's the gap right there. So it's important to make my production goals that I fill that gap and I get somebody to work in that area. So I can go and schedule them right here, but immediately it's giving me some indications that, wait a minute, there are some incomplete certifications here. You want to make sure that if you want to put Grace Wright into that position, she first has to go and complete some certifications before you can schedule her into that position. So bringing that information from learning management, talent management, HR, right into workforce management, where Ida does her work, is crucial for Ida to be successful. And when Ida is successful, she's more engaged, she's happier, and she actually feels really good about what it is she's doing at Stark Enterprises. So that was just another little bit more insight onto what we can do to our line managers, and not just operations. We want to give them access to the people as well. That's really important. Ida wants to understand Terence, where Terence is, what is his current job fit, how does he fit into his current role, and what can she do to help him maybe from a development plan perspective. What can she do to help Terence get to a place within her team that he's happy, that he feels fulfilled, and that he means, or that he can contribute more to the team as a whole. That's really important for Ida as well. So as we switch back and we look at Ida, just to summarize what we've seen up until this point, we looked at the importance of how can we make that initial connection with the unconnected worker. There we need to look at our initial point of entry, which is a time clock, a cash register, a till, whatever that may be, but we need to maximize it. That system needs to know that when that unconnected worker, when Terence clocks in, he needs to know that he's just not another number, that we know him, we can help him, we can grow him, and we can reward him. And we do that in the engagement process. Once we've made that initial connection, it needs to be strong enough so that we can have portal points where we can engage our workers so that we can capture their attention and imagination. And that way, that is where we can drive our HR assets to them so that they don't just become shelfware, so that they can become really utilized. And that's what's going to drive results. At the end of the day, when we unify our HR processes and we close the people gap, that means we bring HR to the user. And when I say HR, I mean everything about them. I mean learning management, talent management, gamification, social and collaboration. If we bring that right down to where the user does their work, we're going to have better engagement and we're going to see the results that we need. So with that, let's have, I think, do we have one more poll here just to see how we're doing before we go into our panel discussion? Do we have one more poll?
We do, Warren, and we also have some questions. We have a raised hand already.
Oh, okay, good. That's great.
So do we want to take the question or do we want to do the poll?
So we're going to move into the panel. We're going to move into the panel discussion, but we already have some raised hand in terms of questions. So if you do have questions, there is a question section at the bottom, or indeed you can raise your hand, and then the lovely Kasia will unmute your line.
Yep. So there is one question, one hand raised, and you have now been unmuted. Deepak, you are self-muted. You need to unmute yourself first. Okay, Deepak is still self-muted.
I think I'll read out the question. I think I can see it. I think I can see it. So it's a good question because I think what Warren did was show you a range of devices that we can use to connect with the employee. So there's a little bit of kiosk, a little bit of till, a little bit of, of different portal. And the question is, where does Terence take up the online training? So Warren, do you want to deal with that, and then I can give the learning answer as well? But do you want to explain where does he take the online training? Because effectively, I think we've shown a number of devices just to show what you can do, but it may not be that all training is actually online.
Absolutely, that's a great question. And based on just what I showed you there, in today's modern world, training can be taken on, of course, a mobile device, but this happens to be an unconnected user, so they don't have a mobile device there. So what we can leverage here is one of those portals. That's a great way. So a kiosk, a till, anything that can run a browser, a modern browser. That is a great way where Terence can take his training. So when Terence goes to that portal and he sees that timeline and he sees all his training, did you see there was a button there that said start? By clicking start, Terence can take his training right there and there. And upon completion, if there's an assessment, he'll do the assessment. And upon completion, that will go straight into his transcript, and that will be available right there within the LMS. So that's where we would recommend he can take it through that portal.
So I think, Warren, I think it depends on the scalability of the learning, right? So if it's specific and a one point or one training, then the portal is absolutely, yeah, fine. If there's a bulk training, typically what we find in the factories or in the engineering, we are doing kind of an on-site. So there's a variation of whether it be on-site or whether it be face-to-face e-learning or whether it be blended learning, depending on those dynamics of the scalability, how many people are going through the learning. Because if you have a huge volume, you are typically using the on-site. The kiosk model, or that one device touch point, so if it is a one piece and there's a short 5-minute learning or e-learning, that's when they're going through the kiosk. So it is your typical it depends answer on the amount of training that's done. Otherwise, you're going to have huge queue on the kiosk. Does that answer? I think it was Deepak. Does that answer your question? You able to unmute?
That was actually Sonal's question, and
oh, Sonal, sorry, hi Sonal.
and Deepak have unmuted himself. So if we can get Deepak's question.
Can we just check with Sonal if that answers the question first? I don't want to.
Sure. Let me just quickly unmute Sonal. Sonal, you are unmuted.
The answer was key.
Yes.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that
okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. So going back to Deepak, please.
Yeah. So
you are now unmuted.
So my question is, this kiosk will be provided only in the campuses, right?
Warren, kiosks are provided on site.
Campuses
is the question.
only, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just I wasn't sure. So, what is the question? Can the kiosks only be provided on the campus site, or is that generally where they are found? The answer is yes. So generally they are staggered, or they are made available. And when I say a kiosk, it's really just any kind of portal that runs a modern browser. But they are placed strategically on site where we find users go to the break room, or they switch between donning and doffing, putting getting dressed onto their protective gear, whatever that may be, or as they walking between shifts. So that is typically where it is. We have had customers ask that they also be available on site, and where we use technology such as IP filtering, where we can control the level of access outside of the campus. That is available too. So there's a user experience on the campus, but there is also a different user experience. Even though they log into the same URL and they use the same credentials, there could be a different user experience if this is provided off campus. For instance, if they're at home and they want to pull it up maybe on their iPad or tablet, there are self-service features that can be provided there, but it can be controlled based on where they're accessing from.
And Deepak, which devices do you have? Because I think our key point is it has to be the point of interaction, whichever device they have. So I don't know if you have shop tills, or if you have, if some engineers, for example, have mobiles. Which devices do you have that everyday point of connection to the employee?
Deepak, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah. So I use both mobile and laptop and mobile.
Okay, so mobile for you. And some cases that's fine. In some industries that on the shop floor, you know, the mobile isn't allowed. So in some cases, mobile is right. Where it's not, there are just other options that we wanted to also show. Great.
Can we take another question? There are quite a few questions on the question panel, plus a couple of raised hands. So I will start with Barbara. Barbara, you are now unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes. Hi, Barbara.
Hi. So I also wrote a question because, okay, but I will read it. So we were talking about tools, but how can we assure that we have the right digital mindset to go really digital?
A very good question. Go on, Warren. Do you want me to handle or you want to take?
But you can go first, because I think there's two ways you can look at it, right?
I would be interested actually in listening to both of you and what you think about it.
So I think
Both of you?
mindset is one of the critical shifts that's needed. You can put in the technology, but unless you change the mindset, that has to come from leadership. You have to look at the kind of relook at the operating model. And I think you can tell from the introduction slides that I give, it's people, it's processes, it's technology. What is it that we're trying to achieve? What behaviors do we need to go behind? So mindset to me is key. How do you do that? It's really a digital transformation versus a digital implementation. It's not just implementing that. So there needs to be a program of transformation alongside the implementation. So it is a redesign of what you're doing today. Does that answer your? That was I was being high level. Does that answer the question in terms of, yes, it's mindset, but it's not just the implementation. It's the transformation of the people, the process, the technology, the leadership, and the goals that you want to achieve.
And to add to that, that is really well said, Chantal, because it is a transformation, and part of transformation is a culture. It's creating a digital culture within the organization, and it starts with creating a road to maturity, a maturity framework that takes you from where you are, like in the beginning of the polls, to where you'd like to be from a digital perspective. And there's a lot of facets that go into that. Like we just spoke about, top-down shift, addressing the different types of employees and the demographics that we have. We got to, everyone's expectations have to be met from a digital perspective. We look at the user experience. We look at artificial intelligence. All of these things need to make it into the mindset from both leadership, but then culminates down to the employees. And what we touched on today is part of that. If we don't have just something more than a ka-ching, when somebody clocks in, for instance, it's going to be really difficult to get to a digital mindset. So that's a really good question.
One of the things we do, Barbara, is, and I don't know if you've seen our digital report. So we work with MIT, and what does the digital mindset mean? So when I say leadership, it is really aligning with the strategy. So we have this profile called Digerati. Those organizations that are really conversing and looking at what does that mean for leadership. So if, for example, you're in the financial sector, what's our new business model going to look like? How is that going to possibly break down in terms of blockchain, for example, or in terms of the reinsurance industry, or different pieces, and linking that leadership conversation and having that filter through to the organization. It's real strategy alignment, and then what needs to go behind it in terms of your people, your process, your technology, and making that shift. And that has to come from across the organization versus just implementing a new human capital management system.
Thank you.
Next question.
Okay, so there are quite a lot of questions, and it's already 5 p.m. So,
that's the point.
So do we want to take a couple more questions here, or do we want to answer them in the email to all of the participants along with the webinar recording?
So we will answer and we will send back out. I wonder if there's any more. Are there any more pivotal ones? That was a really good one that Barbara gave, and I think we'll send the MIT work that we've done back as well. Are there any pivotal ones?
You can check on the question panel if you can see it.
too small. It's too small. Okay, we will answer the questions and we will send that back out with the recording of the webinar. I think there will also be contact details if you want to come back to anything specific to us as well. If you want to pick up on a one-to-one level, please do so. But we will come back and we will answer each of your questions and send that out to you. Thank you, everyone.
Exactly.
So I will close and say thank you for meeting Terence. Thank you for the first set, attending our first webinar. If you have any feedback, I know we've taken feedback along. This is really the first one that we've done. There will be other topics. The next one is very much on dealing with the digital skills. But if you have any feedback coming towards us, please do let us know and you will receive an email with the answered questions. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Chantal.